welcome to Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I'm Mark Bishop.
And this is not part of a season of Unlimited Opinions. This is just a special extra episode because we haven't had time to read our next book. We actually just decided on what that would be like a couple hours ago. And so then that's what we'll be doing for season 7. I guess that's where we can start for this episode. But you just said you wanted to go on some rants, I think is what you said.
I just thought today we're recording this on New Year's Day. Mm-hmm. It's now 2024. And I thought we ought to have we're now 6 seasons into this. We've never had just a regular, we'll just talk.
I guess we haven't.
About the world. And anyway, I thought I wanted your thoughts on how your 2023 went. What your expectations are for 2024.
All right.
Yeah. You don't want to share any information with
Well, I figured we could start with just talking about next season, because we did just decide that the next book we'll be reading is Peter Kreeft's A Refutation of Moral Relativism from 1999, I think was when that was published. He's a Catholic author who's written a bunch of philosophical stuff. He's written about Tolkien, written about C.S. Lewis and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I know the name. And then we just went to a bookstore last week and I was looking at titles and I saw that one. So we had to pick it up. It's written as an interview style format, like a fictional interview between two characters where one's a moral absolutist, one's a moral relativist, where everything's subjective. And so it's just kind of answering a lot of the big questions, I guess, about moral relativism. So it should be interesting for season 7.
Should be a page turner. And we had talked about doing some more, what do you call that?
Philosophy. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
More technical, more academic type readings.
But we're looking at philosophy of language is really what we're looking at. Correct. Something that would talk more about big picture, like the importance of language, how we understand language and stuff like that.
I think we should go back to that at some point.
I think we should. I think it's just the book selection is a problem. I don't know if there's any sort of lightweight, here are the big questions about language, right? It's got it's either be very academic or it's going to be very left-leaning and crazy.
Oh, I don't know about that.
It's pretty likely.
Well, what we need to do is, or I need to do, is find an old philosophy of language textbook from at least 15 years ago, before the world went mad. And I found that when I go to used bookstores, which I like to do, I find that I'm buying dictionaries. Yes,
I have noticed you picked up a dictionary and a thesaurus the other day.
Yes, because I know at some point, that and I've always, because I'm old enough, I've always had this worry about, if the power goes off, you've got nothing to read now, Yeah. It's all electronic. Mm-hmm. What happens if the power is intermittent? Well, I'm going to read a book on my phone or my device. Well, it's a good thing
I have books scattered all around here, and I have 2 massive plastic totes full of books that are just packed away in the basement.
Covered. You're good. But the dictionaries, they always want to artificially change the meaning of words. It's not organic. Yeah. It's a political agenda, which of course is what the Soviets always do. Well, I'm not lying. I mean, that's true. And so I think I'm very much interested in the philosophy of language and how especially governments really want to manipulate language to achieve a certain ends. And I think there's some interesting topics on that.
No, I agree.
I think your field of study with regard to the sociological aspects of language fascinate me, and I know nothing about them. Yeah,
I mean, the problem is I think it is finding a book about that, because there's really sort of because I've looked at a whole bunch of linguistics books, and there's really 2 genres essentially. There's one school that's just here's some interesting facts about world languages. I mean, that's cool stuff to read. I have a book, I think it's called Babel, that was cool. It's goes through the history and stuff of the 20 most spoken languages, but there's not a lot that we can talk about with that. It's just an interesting, informative book. And the other genre is really just academic writing, where it's really dense, really sort of into the details. If you want to find something that's a broader audience appeal, it's usually a more factual based, more just here's some interesting stuff about language, rather than big questions, big theories about linguistics or philosophy of language.
I think. Sorry to kind of cut you off there, but I think that the subject is interesting enough, and you're enough of an expert in it, that I think we need to not get bogged down in the book. A book report thing. I think that's what we kind of got in a rut with this last season, reporting on what was the book and not actually talking about it.
I think part of that was the subject matter too. It's I mean, we got into some like discussion stuff,
but I think it would free us up if we used a book, because really the whole point behind having a book in the first place was just to structure our discussion. So it wasn't just me going on rants randomly without any real organization or point.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so I think,
and yet that's what half of our episodes are anyway.
Well, it's like every conversation with me.
That's true.
But if we had a pretty academic book, we could just use that as kind of that topic of discussion of chapter 1, 2, 3, whatever.
And that's what I was hoping. We did pick up another book at that same bookstore. It was like Readings in the Philosophy of Language, which has like some of the real like seminal works. I think it was published in 1971. So it is an older book, and it was more so from like really a lot of like 1940s, 1950s philosophy of language type stuff. So Grice and Chomsky and stuff like that. I don't know if you know any of those names, but it's like,
isn't Chomsky like a communist?
Oh yeah, he's crazy, but he was really influential for linguistics as a whole, because he came to prominence against B.F. Skinner. Do you know that name?
I know the name.
He was like the psychologist, if you want to call him that. He was the one who was like, everything is essentially like learned behavior. Oh, yeah. Like the behaviorist is like, you see positive reinforcement, you're going to do that action more often. And that's how he thought that language was learned. You know, when kids are babbling, if they babble something that sounds like a word, then their parents reinforce them and say, oh, well, good job, that's a word. And then they'll keep producing things that sound like their parents. And that was his whole school of thought, is that language is just like any other like learned behaviors. We just learn it from reinforcement. But then Chomsky came along. He's like a real young guy. Back in the 50s, I think, is when his like refutation of Skinner's stuff was published. He was like in his 20s or 30s. Wow. So he was like a real young academic. And he's like, well, no, it's clearly not. And he just cited a whole bunch of examples of that's just not how language works. And he was the one who first like proposed a universal grammar. That there's something like innate in the human mind that lets us like understand the rules of language, that lets us, pick up language. It's more of like a mental thing, not just like a learned behavior. There's something innate in humans for language. And then that's really where a lot of modern linguistics went from there, was really based on Chomsky.
Well, now that you're in your 20s, you better get moving.
I can try.
Chomsky, leave you in the dust.
Before long, I'll be in some sort of graduate program for linguistics. So
what do you think?
I would hope.
You maybe.
One of the 8 schools I applied to will accept me.
I don't know.
You worried?
Well, they might have listened to the podcast.
Well, that's as long as they don't Google my name too much.
As long as they don't listen to anything I say.
Yeah, there you go.
That's always been my fear. So my reluctance initially being having a podcast for you is that number one, I don't think people are entitled to know what I think.
That's great. But
number two, I don't want it to affect you negatively in any way.
Well, it's a good thing that nobody listens. So
that's why I don't want us to market it or otherwise let anybody know that we're doing it.
Oh, that's good. That's the whole point of a podcast.
For posterity, of course, all the aliens are listening to us. So, humanity, they're monitoring us because, the UFOs are real.
What are you talking about?
The UFOs. There's been the government has confirmed that there are UFOs.
Oh, okay.
You don't know this?
Well, yeah, but I don't know how that was connected to what you were saying.
Well, they're listening to us.
Oh, the aliens are listening to us.
Yes, they're listening to all of it, and maybe they'll learn something from us.
That's a really weird thing to say. What I was going to say, though, was that this was the best performing year for our podcast. We got more downloads this year than any other year. Yeah. We grew by like 29% listeners. Again, we don't have like super, huge amounts of people downloading and listening, but there are people out there who do listen to this pretty regularly. So we appreciate them despite what you say.
I kind of worry about them.
Yeah, I know. You went on that whole rant a few episodes ago about how you thought it was such a waste of time for anyone to listen to this, which is a great start to any podcast, is for the host to just insult the audience.
Well, I wasn't really insulting them. I was really insulting us in a backhanded way.
Well, I guess that's true.
But I mean, there's some truth to that. And I think every podcaster should have a certain amount of humility about all the hours they spend in front of a microphone talking about stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Otherwise, you get a big head. I'm fearful that at some point we'll do something or say something that will go viral, as the kids say.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, I will never apologize.
Well, we've published almost or over 150 episodes now. We've been doing this for 3 years. We started this when I was still in high school, and I'm about to graduate from college.
That's pretty amazing. You're still willing to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I find it fun. I mean, it's a lot of like stuff that I'd be reading anyway, and stuff that I'd want to talk about anyway. So it's not like I'm going too much out of my way to do this.
Well, we're going to deal with this moral relativism issue, and I think it'll probably,
which is what we've been talking about for basically every episode of this podcast, which we all just complain about moral relativism.
Yeah, well, it is the
biggest
horrible
problem. Yeah, I think that's here. Let me actually grab the book. Yeah, but I think the first chapter is titled something like that.
Well, but I do want to get back to the philosophy of language maybe next season. We will have more time, but we're going to spend more time picking out what our subject material is on that, because we want to do that right, that justice, because it's a subject area that's dear to your heart. But the moral relativism, I don't know if is that like the seminal or the most important philosophy that is destroying Western civilization?
I would say
something else. I think that might be it. Situational ethics, moral relativism.
Well, the first chapter of the Kreeft book is the importance of moral relativism. Will it really damn our souls and end our species? So he seems to think it's a big problem.
Well, I don't think it'll end our species. I think it is not conducive to a functioning society.
No, not at all. And I think that's really his thesis throughout that book.
So what was your, since we're doing an end of year recap, New Year's, what was your, how many seasons did we do this calendar year? We had 2, didn't we?
We really had 2, I think, which was the Austin Freeman on Tolkien Dogmatics.
The highlight of my year, I will answer my question.
Yes, that's great.
Was getting Austin Freeman on our podcast.
Yeah.
And where he acknowledged that I had insulted his religious faith.
Yeah.
And it started a refutation of what I was. That was the Calvinists.
Yes, the Calvinism. Yeah.
But on the highlight, I would say the number one highlight, him being on the podcast. I think he's a great guy, and I wish him well. And I think he's so smart. I really do hope he ends up writing something. Creatively, like Tolkien's writings, like not commenting until I think he's a really, really talented writer. But I love that even acknowledging that I insulted his beliefs, we could at least come to an agreement that we all hate the Jesuits.
And he still follows us on Twitter. I don't know if I showed you this. Here, let me pull up the tweet on my phone, but he still follows us. And I think we were talking about the Jesuits in one of the recent episodes. So I put something out.
Because I've been going on a lot of rants against our Pope, and I need to really kind of stop doing that, because perhaps he means well.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, I need to give. Maybe that's my New Year's resolution. Maybe I'll have more faith that our Pope is trying to do what he thinks is the right thing, as opposed to just trying to undermine the moral authority of the Catholic Church.
Yes. Well, you're off to a good start.
I'm just saying I'm trying to. I'm not saying that I'm not accusing him of anything.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're just heavily implying that he is. Let's see here.
Well, as a Knight of Columbus, I am a Knight of Columbus.
Mm-hmm. So am I.
And I did I tell you about paying the dues of the Knights of Columbus?
I'm gonna cut you off because I found the tweet, but I put out something, just with every episode. Of course, I tweet like the link and just like a brief little thing or whatever. And I said in the tweet, "Why are the Jesuits the way that they are?" Among other questions. He responded, "We can at least agree in our opinions of the Jesuits," and also sent a GIF of is that John Belushi like holding up a fist on stage or something in solidarity with us. Really. It looks like, or is that? Groundhog Day guy.
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray, yes, not John Belushi. Yes. Holding up a fist in solidarity with us in his opinion of the Jesuits.
Well, I think the thing that's most disappointing is that, like, my parents' generation, my parents were older when I was born, so we skipped our family. The reason why our family is unique, and this is my theory, I have a theory about everything, of course, is our family is unique in our community because our family is one of the few families that skipped the baby boomer generation. Because my parents were born in 25 and 28.
Yeah.
But they got married late. in their 30 is when my mom was 32 when she had my oldest sister. And she was 42 or turning 42 that year that she had me. So because they got married so late and then they had kids late, especially me, I was born in 1970. So we don't have, it literally went from the greatest generation to Generation X.
Yeah.
Although I guess my oldest sister might be like late boomer, I guess. But, and so I think we've avoided that.
Well, your side of the family, at least. So no, mom's side.
Well, yeah, but we're dominant.
Sure.
Well, have you seen the height differential?
That's true.
Just joking. They're great people. But your mother's parents were definitely boomers, right in the sweet spot of that. But there were boomers who protested the war, and there are boomers who went to war. And your grandfather's a veteran, so
there you go.
They are better of the two lot.
Yes.
But anyway, so that's my theory on that.
Yeah, it's a good theory.
I had another thing I was saying.
Well, I was talking to Molly, my girlfriend, one of our listeners.
We're not supposed to identify personal things. All right, go ahead.
I'm not supposed to say her name.
Well, she's our listener.
Okay. But I was talking to her about the Latin Mass and stuff like that, and about how many young people are there. And I forget how we kind of got on the topic, but it's like, because we've mentioned the boomers as like one of the biggest causes of a lot of bad things in this country for now. And she was like, really, I was expecting like there to be a lot of old people at the Latin Mass, because we went to Latin Mass yesterday for the first time, which was really cool. And it was like mostly people 30 and under, with like so many children and everything.
Yes.
And she was like, well, I was expecting a lot of old people. I was like, well, it was really like the boomers when they were younger that really shifted everything directly into the vernacular and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because when they were younger, when they were like our age, they wouldn't have, opposed all of the shifts from a lot of the major tradition and stuff, and sort of went along with it, if not supported it.
Yeah. Well, and I have some thoughts. That was the first Latin Mass I've been to, other than there might have been as a young child, but I would have no memory of those. A couple things. Again, you mentioned the age of the crowd, which was interesting. A lot of like hipster types, as far as their dress and their facial hair for the guys.
Yeah.
And a lot of tweed.
Well, hipster types with big families.
Yes.
So not the usual hipsters.
No, but it looks, the looks of it. But I thought it was really pretty. And of course, we went to what do they call that? The high
An oratory?
mass?
Oh, solemn high mass, yeah.
So a lot of the kind of like Gregorian chant type music, really, really pretty. And I really enjoyed it. And it just seemed more solemn, and people were the big thing was, and I'm glad you gave me a heads up about the dress, because there wasn't a single person wearing jeans in that church.
There's like mostly suits.
Yeah, and there's something that our society is missing about that. I hate wearing a suit, and I'm a lawyer, and so if I get away with going to work, if I don't have any appointments or court, I always have to have a stash of clothes in case I get someone across the street in the courthouse. But I love to wear jeans and just just a more comfortable shirt to work. I feel like I get more done. But having said all that, and I like being casual, there's a place to dress up, and it really it does put you in a different frame of mind. Yeah. I think if you
the whole experience, like with the dress and with really like the reverence and everything, it seemed much less about like the congregation and much more about like actual worship, because I feel like that's a big problem that I have like at a lot of masses now is it's just like a bunch of people who come in and then, oh, what's the priest going to tell us today? And I feel like that's what a lot of people feel is what the Mass is about. And that's really not what the Mass is about at all.
And I'm not a prude or anything, but like even like lectors dressing in casual clothes, they're going to read at Mass. Yeah. You'd think put some slacks on, man.
I've noticed that sometimes.
This is people like golf shorts and a polo. I mean, I guess you got an appointment to go golfing, but or maybe that's just what you think is appropriate to wear. In the sandals or something. Yeah. It's like it's so super. Or Eucharistic ministers, that's anyway. So that I was really impressed by, and I think that's the way to go, because you could see in the church was St. Francis de Sales up in St. Louis City.
Well, technically not a full church.
Well, that's true.
Not a parish church. It's an oratory.
Because
you're
they
talking
won't
about
allow
that.
it.
Yeah, because Pope Francis won't allow parish churches to host Latin masses.
You're trying to provoke me.
I was just clarifying. I was providing clarifying statements.
But I mean, there's enough of a pushback on that they're finding ways to have these masses and to allow these people are very devout. I mean, it's not like people are saying, oh, the common language mass is horrible or not legitimate. I've never heard that from anybody who really likes the Latin mass. But anyway, so that I really liked. I will say this. I do understand the criticism of the Latin mass because you do feel like almost like you're at the movies or something, like you're watching someone else do it. Or like at a symphony, or it's still pretty, but I felt like there's an element to it that is. I felt a little separated from the participation of it.
I can see
part of that is because I've forgotten all the Latin I learned in college, and so I don't even know what they're saying. And they didn't have the priest mic'd up. I don't know if that was intentional or not.
Yeah, I think he was mic'd up, but he was super quiet.
Yeah.
I think it was coming through very, very barely.
But a lot of it was going to be the call and response of the choir anyway, because the high mass and so they're doing a lot of those parts. I think it would have been different.
I think it would have been a lot better if we had gotten missals. Like with the Latin and the English on one side, because that's what a lot of people had. I don't know if you noticed that, but
I did.
A lot of people had those little books. Oh, did you?
Yes.
Oh, when did you buy it?
Last night.
You didn't get me one?
I'll get you one.
Let's going to go to the Catholic supply store.
I'm not opposed to that.
We should go.
But I don't know if they have any. Do you think they
Surely.
have any?
Oh, they'll have missals. They have like everything Catholic. It's a Catholic supply store.
Yeah, I don't know if
they have supplies for Catholics.
They do. Well, the Catholic supply store, St. Louis, is more for like getting school uniforms and gifts for First Communion and confirmation and little girls' First Communion dresses and stuff like that.
But I'm sure
they have Bibles and stuff.
Well, they must have a missal.
Well, let's go find out.
All right.
We'll find out somehow soon. Anyway, what was I going to say? So I understand why there's a change, and if you're not going to put the effort into learning the Latin side of it, I can understand where you're like, why can't we be part of this? Isn't this a community, a church celebration of the Mass? Aren't we supposed to be involved in this? And so I do understand that a little bit better. Now that I've gone to Latin Mass, because you do have a more limited role. Yeah.
I mean, that's fair. I think it's a fair criticism, but, I understand, the other side of it. It's not like, because I think really the idea of the Mass isn't that it's about, us participating now, but it's like us as a whole community joining in, like, because we don't need to like physically join in with what the priest is doing to be a participant. Because it's like so much of, religion is spiritual stuff. And it's like, we don't have to be physically doing actions to be like spiritually participating in something.
Yeah. But, all saying the Our Father together is a pretty decent deal.
Yeah, we did that.
I didn't do that.
Well, you didn't know the Latin.
That's right. Yeah, well, did we do the Our Father?
Yeah, I think the Our Father was said the Pater Noster. Yeah. I don't know. I should have those prayers memorized in Latin, but I don't.
I didn't remember a long thing that would have been the Our Father.
It was probably sung, because you might not recognize it.
Sung. Yeah. Right. Because that's what I'm saying is anyway. So I liked it. It was neat. But anyway, my point was it's up at this church in St. Louis, and not a great neighborhood. Yeah, not a terrible neighborhood, but not great. And I don't know where all these other people were coming from. Of course, we came from a county, 2 counties away, really. Yeah, and it is pretty full church just for a random Sunday. I mean, it's over the holidays, but it's not like it wasn't Christmas Mass. Yeah. And all the kids, man. I mean, there's so many young families, and so you can get people to go to this the beautiful church. It almost looks like a cathedral. Yeah. It's so pretty, but the parking was kind of iffy, and the neighborhood's a little iffy, but everything else is so convenient in the local parishes. And I wonder if they had Latin Mass and the ability to do a Latin Mass is more in other locations if you wouldn't have. increased participation in Mass.
Well, I mean, I think so. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, again, we've talked about this before. I don't know why Pope Francis would restrict it because, young people with big families is exactly what the church needs right now. And it's like
Well, I don't think that's the issue because I think as a pastor, it should never be about what's popular. And I get that. And so I think I think what he's worried about is that you'll have some sort of schism where and I know what the rules are, as I understand it, for the local bishops to allow this, the old liturgy, is the priests that are performing it have to state that they are not critical of the present liturgy in order to revert back to this other way of performing the Mass, which I think that's fine. I think those rules I don't have any issues with the administrative side of it because you want to make sure everybody, hey, we're on the same page.
I'm not doing this to protest.
To do it a different Mass. It's a different language.
I'm not doing this for the sake of difference. I'm doing this for the sake of this is a beautiful Mass. This is a beautiful way to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to have to learn the Latin, which I'm going to put some time into. I mean, I studied it.
Yeah, I mean, I've studied Latin for 2.5 years now, and I didn't really understand much at all because it's sung and it's hard to hear and stuff.
True.
And having the missal be great. Yeah.
Yes, but
I picked up Et cum spirito tuo.
Yeah.
So with your spirit, you said that a whole bunch.
That's right. That is true. What was I going to say? I was going to say something else. Oh, but I go back to a couple episodes ago. We talked about the Latin Mass, and I really, really like the concept of everybody around the world performing the same liturgy and the same universal. And now, I mean, the Latin is the inverse of what it was during the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
It was the language of government, but now it's just the language of church. It's not a live language except for Catholic Mass, really.
Yeah, really.
And, old translations, old books, but it's not, I mean, nobody speaks in Latin at all except for in Catholic Mass. I mean, I don't think there's another religious group that I mean, no religious.
Latin. I know there's like some there's attempts to teach Latin as if it's a living language. There's some like teachers doing that and stuff. I know there's some like weirdo like classical conferences and stuff where it's like, hey, let's all speak in Latin at this conference, but it's never like a usual thing.
Yeah. Well, that would be the Klingon example, like a Star Trek example, but that's not anyway. My point is, it's now so identified with the Catholic Church and the liturgy exclusively. It's a real opportunity in a way if you could, but of course you have to. A lot of people have to learn it. I mean, a lot of people. I mean, how many Catholics are there? There's over 1 billion, I guess. So it would be a big push to get people to learn the Latin. But I really do like that. And I think it would long term. You would think it would cut down on different interpretations.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that was the idea.
Yeah, because then you have a universal language. Yeah. And you wouldn't have these problems. What does this mean? Was that where we say it this way?
And that's the thing. Way. Like even in that Latin Mass, there's one part of the Mass that's in Greek. Yeah. The Kyrie eleison, the Lord have mercy is how we translate it. And that was explicitly like not translated into Latin in the fear that it would be mistranslated from the Greek.
Right.
And so it's like we have that idea of, well, this is universal. We know what this means. And then with all of the Latin around it, if that's not changing, we would all know, well, this is exactly the way it's done. There's not this difference in interpretation.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It was a neat experience. I'm glad we did it. It was 2 hours. Communion took a long time because it was all on the tongue, which I have not done since.
That was the first time I've ever done that.
I think that might be since my first communion.
Really?
I mean, it's been. I don't even remember the last time I would have taken on the tongue the communion. It was that long ago. It would have been way long ago. If ever. I mean, I'm just trying to think of it, but it was a neat experience, and I liked how everybody was, their demeanor, their dress, and their presence there. A lot of respect for the church and for the priest and everything like that, and but it is different. Like I said, a lot of the women were wearing those veils on their head, and that's a little different. I get a little nervous about the super traditional family stuff because I still think, I'm not a feminist, but I do
really.
But I do think that I don't want to conflate the limitations that were in place in the 40s and 50s on women, the bad ones, to come back as part of this. But I think the veils are pretty. I mean, it's a neat touch. It's I view it as similar to a guy wearing a tie. You're getting dressed up, and it's not like subjugating people or anything like that.
Yes.
But anyway, so that was different, new. So what was your? I'd say what my highlight of the year was. Yeah, I know.
Like 15 minutes later,
well, we've gone on a tangent.
We have.
So what is your highlight for the year, and what are your hopes for 2024?
Yeah. I mean, I'd agree. I think the Austin Freeman, that was probably the highlight of the year for the podcast. I mean, what you said, essentially, very nice guy, very smart guy, very funny guy. I remember when he joined the Zoom call, because we didn't know if he had listened to anything. He had followed us on Twitter like a few weeks beforehand, and that's why I thought it would even be possible to bring him on the podcast and stuff. But I remember we were talking like, I'm Adam Bishop, you're Mark Bishop. He goes, he's still Mark Bishop. I'm like, oh no, he's listened to the whole thing. He's like, yeah, I've listened to your whole season. I'm like, oh no, that's awful.
Well, it's fine for you because all you did was say complimentary things.
That's true. That's true.
I was somewhat critical about some of the content of his book. And if I probably should have kept that in mind. I mean, we always comment on people. You don't think, oh, this person might actually listen to my comments.
Yeah. But he listened to every episode of that season, which I think is very funny.
Yeah.
And I think was great to see. I mean, it's always good to see that people do listen to this. As much as you don't want people to, I do like to have some amount of audience.
I don't. It's not. I don't want them to. I just worry.
Yeah.
I just worry about exposing you to criticism. I mean, that's really where it's at. Now, it doesn't stop me from saying stupid stuff. Well, it does sometimes. Believe it or not, I temper what I say.
Really?
Yes.
That's surprising.
So what are your hopes for 2024?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to get, more guests on. I think that'd be fun if we can do that in some way. I never did reach out to the author of the last book. I don't know if we have any interest in doing that. He's an older professor guy, if he's still teaching at all. I know that book was written in 2012. But I think one of the reasons we picked it was because he taught at St. Louis University.
Right. Yeah.
So he is at least somewhat of a local guy. So maybe he'd be interested
Might have to
in coming
invite him into the studio.
to our house.
Although everybody does Zoom, so we do the Zoom again.
Yeah, I think, post-COVID, everyone knows how to work Zoom.
If I could figure out a way to justify it, maybe I can get him on the radio station with me. My
local AM radio show.
Local AM radio station program that nobody listens to.
Yeah.
I'm doing this cross-marketing between the podcast and the AM radio station, but since no one listens to either of them, neither audience grows.
Do you mention the podcast on your AM show?
I think I did once.
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Yeah. I think I did once.
Are you allowed to do that?
Why wouldn't I?
I don't know. Promoting other stuff on air? Or does KJFF not care too much?
I don't know that it's a concern. I have a known podcast with my son. But if it ever blows up, we could. I'm sure if it blows up, I'm sure we can. Arrange to have it marketed by KJF. Have a regular program there. I think what the rule is if you advertise in the station, they'll give you a show. Because coincidentally, when I started running ads for the firm, I got invited
That's funny.
Well, one of the other hosts retired, so it was coincidental. But I started thinking, I wonder if I would have been thought of if I were in advertising.
Yeah, but I'd like to do more episodes like that. We have somebody else on and talk in that capacity. Because I mean, when it's just us, I don't think it's boring, but I think it's a lot of the same thing over and over again.
Yes.
Just kind of mixed up, every once in a while. I don't know how exactly we'd incorporate more of that.
Yes,
but I mean, especially because we only have 2 mics and a soundboard that only fits 2 mic inputs.
Well, we just get more.
Get more, I guess. Yeah, or online as always. Especially when
we have more mic. We have 4 mic inputs.
No, we have 2.
What are those other 2 things?
Those are outputs.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, in and out.
Yes, you're very intrigued by this. Yes.
Well, I mean, they sell them.
They do.
Yeah, so I can always buy one that has more.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. That is true.
But we probably need to fix up a room and soundproof it because we probably sound like we're in a tin can.
Yeah, I mean, once I go through and everything, it doesn't sound too bad. I don't think once I've edited everything up. But
on the rare occasions I listen to myself.
I hardly ever. I think I've listened to like the first episode like once.
Really?
Since I haven't listened to like anything else.
There was one I really thought I did well on, and I didn't listen to myself again. But I was right to think I did well.
That's great.
So what are your hopes? You already said your hopes.
Yeah, I think so.
Just continue and maybe get some more guests.
Yeah, or maybe we can be guests on other podcasts.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Would you ever want to be a guest on another podcast?
I don't. Well, I'll go on Joe Rogan if he invites me.
Joe Rogan, that's your only.
No, I didn't say only, but I think he would be an interesting cat. I'd like to go down to Austin, Texas, and go to his comedy club.
He has a comedy club?
Yeah,
I don't know that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's supposed to be really cool. Because I've seen some interviews with comedians who've performed there, and they said, yeah, look, it's just like it's the perfect comedy club because it was designed by a comedian with an unlimited budget because he just poured a bunch of his Spotify money into it.
Yeah,
and they lock up people's cell phones so that they're not distracted and they can't record.
Yeah, that's what they're going to do when I go to see John Mulaney later this month.
Is that right?
Yeah, because they're going to have phones locked up.
Well,
and
it
everything.
makes sense because otherwise the comedian's going to worry about it. Who's going to put this on social media when I'm making fun of white guys or something? As the safe example of racial hatred. Because if I said some other word, all
of our many listeners would be very upset.
Well, there's somebody recording us for posterity and to get back at us. But
I've been on other podcasts.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you've told me
with
that.
Richard Emerson, who still listens to this podcast. He's had several podcasts. I've been on his thing a couple times, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
I get. Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I think if I was going to be on somebody else's podcast, it probably should be legally related. And by the way, if anybody wants to stream my episodes, illegally speaking, KJFF, you can do that online. But I'm going through the Trump charges now on my show, one after another. So I'm midway through the Georgia case, but only have about 20 minutes each episode. So. And the Georgia thing was so convoluted. My host, who's just retired, really wanted to badmouth all the Democrats and all this and that. So he interrupted with a lot of his comments, which is fine and entertaining, but you can't really get through the facts quickly. But I think those subjects are pretty interesting. But anyway,
I've been meaning to tune into some of those, but it's so early. Aren't you out like 8 in the morning or something?
8:30.
Yeah,
8:30.
Usually at the gym
on Monday
at that time.
mornings. Every other Monday morning. I think I'm back on this coming up Monday.
We could stream my radio show too to all the listeners out there at tmn.truman.edu. I think I'll have the same time slot next semester. I'm not sure, they haven't put out any information, but I'm on Monday nights from 7 to 11 to 11 p.m.
You do,
right?
You do
8 to 11 p.m.
A very good job in that show. First a jazz hour and then soul blues, rhythm blues. You have a tendency to repeat the same adjectives.
Do I?
Yeah,
I haven't noticed that.
Yeah, so like if you have a good adjective for an artist, that episode or that description of that artist, you use the same adjective like 4 times.
Well, usually I don't worry about it too much because I assume nobody's listening throughout the whole show. Because it's like I assume if somebody's listening, they're probably in their car going somewhere and they'll only be tuned in for 5 to 10 minutes total. So I don't. Yes. So that's. I think I repeat information sometimes too when I'm talking about the album because it's like okay, well this person's probably just tuning in and whatever I'm on there because I do like 20-minute breaks of music because that's how long an album side is. So it's like 20 minutes, and then I talk a little bit about the album. So
well, I was thinking about giving you one of my thesauruses.
Yeah, that'd be very helpful, Dad. I appreciate it.
Give you some similar adjectives to use.
I also I tend to fill time sometimes if I'm like flipping something over, if I'm looking for information, I will I think repeat the same stuff over and over again. So
well, I think you do an excellent job.
Well,
and I would tell you if I didn't think you were doing a good job. I'm still a teacher. By the way, I've got another class coming up in the spring. So I'm doing all sorts of things.
You're a professor, not a teacher.
Well, they call me professor. Like my students say, Professor Bishop.
You're a professor.
I'm not a professor.
Well, you are. You have a professor position.
No, I'm an adjunct instructor. I'm not a professor.
Oh, it's the same thing.
Well, I actually hold adjuncts in higher esteem than professors.
Well,
it's an actual title. I think a full-time, because you have professors. You have like associate professors. You know.
One of I think my favorite professor now up at Truman, his official title is he's still just instructor.
Is that right?
And he's a full-time instructor in classics, not a professor.
Yeah, that's how they get you. They get a lot of good work out of you without paying you as a professor.
Yeah, he's been there for years. So
I took that job. I didn't even know what I paid.
It was a very disorganized process.
Oh man, I'll tell you. I think I'm supposed to do some more training.
Oh, what do you? On what?
On the use of the canvas. Like I don't know if you have canvas or blackboard or whatever.
We use Bright Space now up at Sherman, which is like a budget canvas, budget Blackboard. Blackboard's the budget version of Canvas, and we have the budget version of Blackboard.
Okay. Well, it's got a lot of bells and whistles, so I mean, I do need to finish the training, but it's a project. It's like a part-time job trying to get some good training on it. Now that I know I'm supposed to have done it, they didn't even tell me. They could have told me a year ago. I don't know. They didn't. Yeah,
I probably should have.
Yes. Any other thoughts, or we got?
I think we can wrap things. We've been talking for 40 minutes already, so it's been a good time. Well, I hope everybody listening is excited for season 7 now, as we move past over 3 years of doing this podcast, because we just hit 3 years back in November.
Yes.
So we'll be going into our 4th year now, here in 2024. But yeah, I mean, I to kind of summarize, I guess I would like to incorporate some more guest episodes. If you're listening and you want to be a guest, tweet at us, follow us on Twitter. At ULMTD opinions.
That would be an appropriate contest.
Yeah, just
anybody who tweets has a right to be a guest and say whatever they want about anything. And we'll give you a free T-shirt.
Yeah, there you go. Which we still have. I haven't edited those T-shirts at all, but I did come up with the design according to your description in the last episode of. I think it was the last episode of Gay Jesuit, where it's like a Superman logo, GJ. And then the quote about the Jesuits believing that Chairman Mao is the true hope for the gospel in the 20th century or whatever. In
defense of the Jesuits, there was only a few of them.
That's true. Only a couple of them. Not all.
Granted, their leadership in Rome, but they all believe it in their heart. But only a couple of them said it.
So I guess it's a binding contract now. If you tweet at us, you can be on the podcast, and that's a rule.
Yeah, they can be on the podcast, say whatever they want. It doesn't mean that we're actually going to upload it. Yeah. We don't broadcast live.
Oh, that's true. Well, this has been I was about to say season something, but it's not a season. This has been an extra end of year,
New Year's Day, beginning of the year.
Yes. Well, we were looking back at the previous year, though.
Well, we're looking forward. Can't look forward without looking back.
That's true. I think that's.
Is it?
Nope. I don't know what that means.
You can't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. No, that's probably not true.
Yeah. I feel like there's a Tolkien poem about that.
My parents used to have a Chevrolet Caprice Classic that had 3 rows seating, and the third row was 2 seats that were essentially in the trunk that faced the rear and had a big glass window, and it was a death trap because you'd see the pickup truck coming at you as it right before it squashed you flat into the seat behind you. But I remember we were going out to dinner with one of my friends, great friends, and she's passed away many years ago. Her name was Genevieve, and my parents were insisting she sit in the front seat. She said, "No, I want to sit in that back row seat." And they're like, "Why would you want to do that?" She says, I really want to see where I've been." I just thought that was just the funniest little thing.
Yeah, that's weird.
So because you sit in the back and you face.
See where you've been.
Yeah, she said, "I really want to see where I've been." Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so profound in a way.
It was. We all kind of went, huh. And then we laughed and we got in the car and went to the spaghetti factory.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. That's all you need.
That was a big night out.
To the spaghetti factory.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
All right. Well, this has been our beginning of the year special for Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
I'm still Mark Bishop.
Yeah, it was a good episode. We should do that again next year.
Agreed. Yes.